All right, we're gonna start. Ready or not? Seems like mostly not, but. So this is my last Talmud class. Yeah, not everybody knew that, but yeah. One thing we don't need is more cake. Don't bake it. Don't be baking any cakes here. Right? Yeah. Right. Right. You could make a lentil stew. It would be a little bit better. All right. So because it's my last Talmud class, I thought that I would do something a little different. I'm going to go back to this is, and without doubt, my favorite passage from the Talmud. It's a lengthy passage, and what's interesting is I don't think I've ever taught it to this particular class. I've certainly taught it different contexts in the synagogue and around town. It was one of the first things I taught in public in San Diego as part of AJE many years ago. But it's a long narrative halachic section on what it's like to be dead, which is one of my favorite topics. That's what I needed. So, what I mean, there's a lot I like about this. I think that you'll see some intentional humor in the passage. I think there's some really interesting storytelling techniques. But the way and some very interesting theology, and you wonder how seriously to take it. I think to take it pretty seriously. But it's also just the way the Talmud tells stories. You'll see it's very similar to the way the Talmud unpacks legal arguments. So the rhetorical techniques are very similar, kind of point, counterpoint, and quoting scripture, and then when quoting scripture doesn't work, trying something else. Anyway, it's all from the tractate Brachot, which has lots of stories. So we're going to skip the first two, which actually are from a different part of the Talmud. And we're going to go about halfway down the page where it says Rabbi and Rabbi Jonathan. Okay, you see that? Mm-hmm. I'm going to try to get through it as much as I can. If you've got questions, feel free to interrupt. But it's pretty lengthy, so we'll try to spend the half hour try to get through as much as we can. Rabbi and Rabbi Jonathan were once walking about in a cemetery, and the blue fringe of Rabbi Jonathan was trailing on the ground. So they're in a cemetery, and it's a tzitzit. That's the blue thread. It's trailing on the ground. Said Rabbi Chia to him, lift it up, so that they, the dead, should not say, tomorrow they are coming to join us, and now they are insulting us. So it's impolite to let your tzitzit drag along the ground, because there's a lot of disadvantages to being dead. I don't want to go through all. There's advantages too. There's a lot of disadvantages, but one of the principal disadvantages is that you're not allowed to perform certain mitzvot anymore, including wearing tzitzit. So the dead people don't perform mitzvot. So some of you know you can be buried with your talis, but they'll often clip off the tzitzit because the commandment to wear a talis is really just the tzitzit, and so you're going to make the dead jealous because hey, we get to wear tzitzit and you don't. You're sort of rubbing their faces in it. So the last thing you want to do is to be dragging your tzitzit on the ground while you're walking through a cemetery. Does everybody understand? Yes. All right, some blank faces, but you get all right. All right. So that rebuke, it's a rebuke, like pick up your tzitzit. That rebuke turns into a very long halachic discussion about the nature of death. So that's what we're going to be doing now. He said to him, "Do they know so much? Is it not written, but the dead know not anything?" It says in the scripture, the dead don't know anything. So that's the question. So, well, it doesn't matter if I have my tzitzit dragging on the ground. They're not going to know because they're dead. But then it goes back to me, applied to him. If you have read once, you have not repeated. If you have repeated, you have not gone over a third time. If you've gone over a third time, you have not had it explained to you. This is a really sharp rebuke. A lot of you have been studying Talmud with me for many are and I don't think we've come across a sharper rebuke as this. Like you don't know what you're talking about. So this sets up the argument. The argument is, are dead people aware of what's happening down here? That's the whole argument. And there's three possible answers: yes, no, or maybe. So we're going to go through the yes, no, and the maybe. Okay. And they're arguing back and forth. So you have to imagine Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Jonathan now are in charge of this argument, arguing back and forth. But really it's the editor of the Talmud who is presenting arguments back and forth. So I want you to look and see what kind of arguments are being presented and what conclusions are being drawn. Okay, and then also sort of you want to think about why do we care about this? I mean, is it really just about, okay, I'll lift up my tzitzit or not, or is clearly there's something broader? What's the broader issue? What's the broader principle? Okay, the sons of Rabbi Chia went out to cultivate their property. This is a story, and they began to forget their learning. They tried very hard to recall it. This is their Jewish learning. Said one to the other, "Does our father know of our trouble?" The father is dead. So, and the idea is the father would be heartbroken to know that he taught them all this great Jewish stuff, and they're forgetting it. There's a lot of allusions to the process of aging in these stories, which the rabbis just throw in there. And we're supposed to understand that this is also in the topic of dying. Because when do you start to forget things? I mean, I know this now. You know, when you get older. And what does it mean to be dead? I mean, maybe it means to forget everything. So so sort of like the shadow of death is descending on these guys just by the fact that they're forgetting things, and then they're remembering their late father. "How should he know?" replied the other, "seeing that it is written, his sons come to honor, and he knoweth it not." So this is just a duel of texts from the Torah. So we've got one that says they don't know anything. His sons come to honor, he knoweth it not. Said the other to him, "But does he not know? Is it not written? But his flesh grieveth for him, and his soul mourneth over him." And Rabbi Isaac said, commenting on this, "The worm is as painful to the dead as a needle in the flesh of the living." That's a disconcerting thought. The idea there is that you actually feel the worms eating your body. All right. So, but just we'll take a step back from our panic for a second and just say it's actually just 2 points of view. So one scripture seems to indicate the dead are dead; they don't know anything. The other says, no, wait a second. We have this teaching that says that they actually feel the gnawing on the bones of the worms, which means they're aware of everything. They can hear us.
Where's the worm one?
Sorry?
Where's the worm scripture? In scripture?
Well, the worm is not actually in Scripture. It's Rabbi Isaac's midrash, which they're taken as authoritative, as the authoritative meaning of that verse. Okay. But he replied, "It is explained that they know their own pain. They do not know the pain of others." So, well, you could explain that. Just say, well, maybe they can feel the worms, but it doesn't mean they're aware of us up here and what we're doing, what we're going through. You know, that our tzitzit are dragging on the ground, or that we're forgetting our learning. So the first stab at trying to understand, trying to solve this, are the dead aware of things, is a battle of Scripture that comes from this other different story, and it's basically a tie. I've got my verse, you've got your verse. I can explain your verse, you can explain my verse. So we have to keep going. And so this often, by the way, in halachic discussions too, they often just start with, okay, let's look at the Bible. What does the Bible say? We'll look and see, are there verses here that can convince us one way or another? So that's how the argument starts. And if there aren't, sometimes there aren't verses, because the verses are in different directions. So then you have to go to experience, practical stories that maybe can tell us what the answer is. So now we have some practical stories. The rest of the Talmud, the rest of the argument is basically based on stories that have come down to us. And there's some pretty wild stories. By definition, they're ghost stories, because they're stories about, whether or not the dead people are aware or not. And this is the first is the longest, I think. Yeah. Is that so? Has it not been taught? It is related that a certain pious man gave a dinar to a poor man. Dinar is a lot of money. On the year of New Year in a drought. So it was during, you could say, a recession. Drought is kind of their recession. And he gave away a lot of money to a poor man, and his wife scolded him. So they fought over this donation that the husband gave. And he went and passed the night in the cemetery. Okay, so he did what you and I would do if you have a fight with your spouse. You go off and you sleep in the cemetery. It's a very normal, natural thing to do. You don't sleep on the couch. Right. So there wasn't a couch available, so he goes off and sleeps in the cemetery. And he heard two spirits conversing with one another. So while he's there, he overhears there's two ghosts talking to one another. And here's what they said. Said one to her companion, "My dear, come and let us wander about the world, and let us hear from behind the curtain what suffering is coming on the world." I just love that line. First of all, all that separates us from them seems to be a curtain, and also it seems to be possible to go and visit. There's those two spirits, and they're hovering in the cemetery. Also, this strange idea that that's where the dead people are. They're in the cemetery. But hold on to that for a second. So and they want to have a little adventure. Let's go see what's happening in the land of the living. And the way they phrase it, let's see what trouble is coming. which I mean, it could just be an idiomatic phrase to say what's happening over there. But it also could be they're interested in the troubles because they're past the troubles at this point, right? They're dead. So the troubles don't affect them. So for them to go at droughts and wars and all that, it's all amusement for them because they don't care anymore. Or I said it could just be an idiomatic phrase, meaning we'll go see what's going on there. All right. Said her companion to her, I am not able because I am buried in a matting of reeds. But do you go and whatever you hear, tell me. Okay, so we learned something here. If you're improperly buried in a matting of reeds, and there's actually very serious halakhic requirements for burial. If you're improperly buried, it means that you're sentenced to
stay in place.
To stay in place, right? You have to stay wherever the place is. You're not allowed to visit in the land of the living. It's like a house arrest. Okay. But she said, but you go, and you go, and then you'll tell me. I'll live vicariously through you. So the other went and wandered and returned. Said her companion to her, my dear, what have you heard from behind the curtain? So she hears. I mean, there's right away. The story should end right here, because as soon as the spirit comes back and says, well, here's what I heard, it proves the point. Remember, it's hard in this. You don't want to lose the thread of the argument, but what's generating the argument is this question: can the dead hear? Are they aware what's going on? So if you can go there and report back, it should be it's over, but it's not over. And that tells us something, that they're looking for something a little deeper than just do they know what the weather is going to be here in the land of the living. And she replied, I heard that whoever sows after the first rainfall will have his crop smitten by hail. So she learns some issues about farming, which to them is the principal industry. So for our purposes, is she learned something very important about the economy, the future economy. I mean, really, to our purposes, it would be something like, I learned that these stocks are going down, and these stocks are going up. Remember, it's not just these two people talking. There's a third guy who's alive that's overhearing the conversation. So the man went and did not sow until the second rainfall, with the result that everyone's crop was smitten and his was not smitten. So the guy takes the information and he makes a killing, right? Becomes rich, he's very wealthy because he's got insider information. He hears from this, and he follows their advice. You have to wonder, did he hesitate before following the advice of ghosts? But we don't know. He doesn't. I mean, it doesn't say. And he follows the advice and he becomes rich. All right. The next year he went again and passed the night in the cemetery. So it's a pretty good deal here. He goes back. Now, I want to tell you, there are commentaries to this. I can't go through the whole thing. There are commentaries to this. So the question is, why does a year from that point, he goes back and spends the night in the cemetery again? The question is why. So it may be the answer is obvious because, well, it worked then. Maybe I'll get some more advice on when to plan. The thing is that there is a halacha. There's a Jewish law that you're not allowed to try to communicate with the dead. Right? That's the commandment. And so here, this second time at least, he's obviously trying to communicate with the dead. He wants to hear from them. And but the problem is he's called a pious man. So a pious man's not going to violate Jewish law just to make money. So a lot of commentaries say, well, he had another fight with his wife. and so it's God forbid that he's greedy, and he wants to go and get more money. It's not because of that. It's he had another fight with his wife. But we don't really know. For whatever reason, he goes back. The next year he went again and passed the night in the cemetery, heard the two spirits conversing with one another, said one to her companion, come, let us wander about the world and hear from behind the curtain what punishment is coming upon the world. Said the other to her, my dear, did I not tell you I'm not able because I am buried in a matting of reeds? So between that year, somehow the one spook has forgotten that the other one is under this house arrest. So they go through the same dialogue again. But do you go, and whatever you hear, come and tell me. So it's actually a formula that's just repeated. It's word for word. So the other went and wandered about the world and returned. She said to her, my dear, what have you heard from behind the curtain? She replied, I heard that whoever sows after the later rain will have his crop smitten with blight. So same thing. It's slightly different, but it's more information about the economy. So the man went and sowed after the first rain, with the result that everyone else's crop was blighted and his was not blighted. So if he was rich before, he's even richer now. Okay, so he's on to something. I'm going to keep going. Now his wife starts to wonder, because he doesn't tell the wife in the beginning. He just suddenly, he goes from being a mediocre, I don't know, but he's not a wealthy man, but he goes to being a normal farmer to suddenly very, very wealthy. So now the wife suddenly gets suspicious. Said his wife to him, "How is it that last year everyone else's crop was smitten and yours is not smitten? And this year everyone else's crop is blighted and yours is not blighted?" So he related to her all his experiences. So he just tells her, well, here's what happened. I was in the cemetery. The story goes that shortly afterwards, a quarrel broke out between the wife of that pious man, it's the wife that asked the question, and the mother of the child. So now we find out that the person who is stuck in house arrest, that can't wander beyond the curtain, is a child. So as a child. So, and the mother, and the wife runs into the mother. And the former said to the latter, "Come, and I will show you your daughter, buried in the matting of reeds." So she knows that the daughter is improperly buried, and that touches her. She doesn't, she wants let's because she didn't know, the mother didn't know that that's not correct. So she wants to show the mother, the wife, doing her a good deed. Let's make sure your daughter is properly buried, without the implication that then she'll be able to be free and wander about the world, but just that she happens to know that the daughter is improperly buried. Okay. And then the assumption is, okay, then they properly bury her. The next year, the man went again and spent the night in the cemetery. So again, the man is another fight with his wife. It doesn't say, but still, he's going again, and heard those conversing together. But this time they say something different. One said, "My dear, come, let us wander about the world and hear from behind the curtain what suffering is coming upon the world." Now this time, the child can go with her because she's been properly buried. They corrected the flaw. "My dear, leave me alone. Our conversation has already been heard among the living." So now they say, no, we can't do it anymore. Because now they know the whole story. Somehow they know the whole story that that someone's been overhearing, and so they're not going to say anymore. Now, well, I'm going to keep going. This would prove that they know. So that would prove somehow word gets to them that this guy's been taking advantage of their conversation, making a lot of money, and so they shut up. And that should prove to us, remember the question we start with is, are the dead aware? So this should prove to us that yes, the dead are aware, but we have an answer to that. Perhaps some other man, after his deceased went and told them. So they say, well, it doesn't necessarily mean they're aware of what's going on. It could be that somebody died, and after he died, they went up and told them, "You guys better shut up because that guy down there, he's overhearing this and he's making money because of you," and that's how they know. The other possibility is that they overheard, but we don't know that they overheard. They don't tell. The story doesn't tell us how they heard. So that's interesting. So we have this whole long story, which proves nothing. I mean, it's also, by the way, I mean, the Talmud giving us this long story, they sort of make us think that we're only telling you the story in service of this halakhic argument, but in fact, they want to tell the story. It's an amazing story, and I think you're supposed to sort of study the story and see what kind of questions you might have from it. But for the purpose of the halakhic argument, the story doesn't prove anything. Except what's interesting to me is that it really does, because they seem to know about the economy. And if they know about the economy, it means that they know that the tzitzit are being dragged on the cemetery. But the Talmud chooses not to focus on that they know the economy. The Talmud chooses to focus on the fact that we don't know from this that they learned that the man was trading in their insider knowledge. And that's the end of the story. I mean, so that's the end of that. So now they have to pick a different story. Okay. Are there any questions about the story? Yeah,
it's so
one or
bizarre.
two. It's bizarre.
And the whole idea that the only reason they want to go back is to see how everybody's suffering.
It's fun. They have fun. So I'll tell you, just because we don't have that much time, one of my theories is that the purpose of these stories is to undermine a natural fear of death that we have. The story starts with the fear of death, basic fear of death, which is forgetting things, being forgetful. There's that guy that, we're forgetting things and our father is going to be sad about us. And ultimately dying is forgetfulness, the total forgetfulness. So then we have a story that eases our fear of dying because it seems like fun to be dead there. I mean, they're traveling about the world and it's an adventure and it's not a very scary ghost story. So some of what these stories do is they undermine our resistance to dying, our fear of death. So let me go on, because the next one we have that too.
So I just have a question. What is an improper burial?
What is a proper burial?
Improper.
Well, it says in the matting of reeds, just the way the deeds
Maybe
are.
she drowned and she was there, and she wasn't buried properly. It sounds like that might have been.
Or they just you're supposed to be buried in a shroud, and instead she's buried in reeds. They covered her body in a bunch of reeds. They didn't know about the shroud law. So. Okay.
Does it have to be in certain areas, though?
Yeah, a lot of rules. There's a lot of rules. Yeah,
So
a lot of rules. Yeah. That's the scary part of the story to me, is that there are a lot of rules, and it seems to indicate if you're not buried properly, there's serious repercussions for the dead person. I don't think that's the point of the story, by the way.
Yeah.
I know. So I prefer not to get caught up in that right now.
This is the source of the episode in Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof, where the mother dreams about the dead.
I think there's all sorts of folklore, about that, and this is just part of it. So this is part of the Jewish folklore on death and dying. This is the longest of the stories. So let me get through at least one more of these stories. Come in here. So this is another story. Rabbi Zeiri deposited some money with his landlady. While he was away visiting Rav, she died. Okay. So Zeiri deposited some money with his landlady, and then she died. So we went after her to the cemetery and said to her, "Where's my money?" So, because she needs to know, and she's dead. So that's an obvious thing to do. You go to the cemetery and you ask, "Where's my money?" Okay. That's really interesting to me too, because it shows that, at least from the storyteller's perspective, there's easy communication between here and wherever the dead are. And so obviously they know. I mean, the story assumes that they know. It assumes that you can call them or ask a question. But let me go on. She replied to him, "Go and take it from under the ground in the hole of the doorpost in such and such a place." Okay. So first thing she does, she tells him, "Here's the money." Then, as long as she's got him on the line, she's got a few other instructions. "Tell my mother to send me my comb and my tube of eye paint by the hand of so-and-so who's coming here tomorrow." So she knows a lot. She knows that so-and-so, a person, is about to die. And since they're about to die, it's like when you have a friend traveling to Israel and you say, bring them M&Ms. Because you didn't used to be able to buy M&Ms in Israel. I think you can now. But
Really? Why was that?
Yeah, I don't know. But So she says the same thing is coming. The idea also that this eye makeup, she forgot her eye makeup, and somehow you can travel with that. It's just bizarre. But forget all the bizarre, because remember, the story is interesting in and of itself, but it's there for a point. The point is, do the dead know? And this teaches, does this not show that they know? They know all sorts of things. First of all, you can talk to them. Second of all, they know who's about to die. Okay, and perhaps Duma announces to them beforehand. So the knowledge you're talking about here is the knowledge that somebody is about to die. So that would indicate they have full knowledge of what goes on here. By the way, that's kind of an interesting, I'm going too far afield for a second, but when you think about dying, does the fact that you continue to know about what happens here, is that a fearful thought, a pleasant thought, or not? On the one hand, yeah, right. You feel like you want to know. You want to know how your children are doing, right? You want to know how your grandchildren are doing. On the other hand, you may know too much. You may end up, continuing to suffer with them, continuing to there's not just nachas sometimes, with family. Sometimes they're right. You want to rest. That's it. Rest. They say rest in peace. So I think as we're reading the story, we're also thinking that too. That's one of the, and also, is it comforting to us to think that the dead are watching over us? Well, we often use that in phrases and comforting each other. Okay, your mother, I know, is with us on this wedding, and she's enjoying and celebrating with us. So on the one hand, that's comforting. On the one hand, it's a little disturbing, right, to think that my mother knows this. Mm-hmm. So that's floating through this argument, floating through all these different narratives. So here in the story, there's an indication that she knows a lot. She knows who's about to die. Okay. On the other hand, I'll probably have to stop with this. On the other hand, it's a very light story, right? I mean, it's funny. And so again, it undermines our fear of death. So dying isn't a very fearsome experience. There's you actually wear eye makeup, and you can so whatever you're experiencing here, you can experience there, but maybe better. Anyhow, so the response though is that it's a special kind of knowledge that Duma is one of the names for the angel of death. So maybe Duma just posts a list, every week. Just as a courtesy. Here's who's about to come. It doesn't mean that they have full knowledge of everything that's going to happen, but one thing they do know is who's about to die. Okay, so in other words, we told that story, and that story is worthless for deciding. All right, let me go on a little bit more. Come in here. The father of Samuel had some money belonging to orphans deposited with him. When he died, Samuel was not with him, and they called him the son who consumes the money of orphans. Okay, so Samuel, it's similar to the last story. Samuel needs to know where the money is, and it was really important for Samuel because it's not his money. It actually belongs to the orphanage. So he goes to so he went after his father to the cemetery and said to the dead, "I am looking for Abba." Abba it's a play on words. Abba means father, but it's also his name. It was a common name in those days. Now it's not a common name, but Abba Ibn, right? So, but then it was a common name. So he says, "I'm looking for my father," but really he's also giving his name. They said to him, "There are many Abbas here," which has also two meanings. One is there's lots of fathers here. Everybody here was a father, probably. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people here are fathers. But also there's a lot of people named Abba. So the story here, it's subtly telling us that when people die, the relationships don't die with them. If your father died, it's still your father. A lot of fathers here. Okay. I want Abba, the son of Abba. It so happens that his father's, remember, there are no last names in those days. There was Abba, the son of. So his father was also named Abba. Abba, the son of father. But Abba, the son of Abba, also means grandfather, or you could say it means grandson. Depends how you do the math. But they replied there were also several Abbas, son of Abba here. So a lot of grandparents here, but also a lot of people with that name. It's a common name. Okay. He said to them, "I want Abba, the son of Abba, father of Samuel." How much more specific can you get? They replied, so now they know. Where is he? They replied, he has gone up to the Academy of the Sky. So very special people get to go to the academy, the Bet Midrash, the best Midrash of the sky. Meanwhile, he saw Levi sitting outside. He said to him, "Why are you sitting outside?" Levi is dead, but he's sitting outside the academy. "Why have you not gone up to heaven?" Really, it means to the Academy of the Sky. He replied, "Because they said to me, for as many years as you did not go up to the Academy of Rav Ephes and hurt his feelings, he will not let you go up to the Academy of the Sky." So hurting the feelings of the teacher by not showing up to class is a crime that's punishable by, I'm telling you this on my last class. It's a crime that's punishable by a stint in purgatory. You actually, so every time you didn't show up and it hurt my feelings, and it did. Don't worry about it. But But there's a punishment in the next world.
It's just the quick aside. My first time I came here a year ago, somebody said to me, "Don't walk out during Rabbi's sermon." He gets upset.
Oh, really? That's funny because
I never did.
Have I ever gotten upset when Meanwhile, his father came. All right, so now they have the reunion. Samuel observed that he was both weeping and laughing. He said to him, "Why are you weeping?" He replied, "Because you are coming here soon." It means that Samuel's about to die. "And why are you laughing?" "Because you are highly esteemed in this world." Because it's Samuel. Samuel is a great celebrity. In those days, the celebrities were rabbis. It was really the good old days. And Samuel was really a great scholar. So, an idea that he's laughing and crying at the same time. By the way, I mean, this obviously shows that they know what's going on. Because, he knows a lot. He knows he's about to die. He knows that he's a celebrity. He thereupon said to him, "If I am esteemed, let them take up Levi." And they did take up Levi. He then said to him, "Where's the money of the orphans?" He replied, "Go and you will find it in the case of the millstones. The money at the top and the bottom is mine. That in the middle is the orphan." So it's buried. He said to him, "Why did you do like that?" He replied, "So that if thieves came, they should take mine. If the earth destroyed any, it should destroy mine. So I was protecting the money that wasn't mine. That's the end of the story. Does this not show that they know? Because this shows that Samuel's father knows lots. Right? He knows that Samuel's about to die. He knows where the money is. He knows that Samuel is esteemed. He knows a lot. Perhaps Samuel was exceptional, as he was esteemed, and they proclaimed beforehand, make way for him. So maybe here, they don't have Duma coming and announcing it, but when a celebrity dies, everybody in heaven knows. And then Rabbi Jonathan also retracted his opinion. So remember, I started this with, so the question is, are the dead aware? And I said there's 3 possible answers. One is yes, one is no, and the third is maybe. The answer here seems to be maybe. or I would actually put it, this is how you'd put it in Talmudic terms, is that some say yes and some say no. And that's the conclusion. Thanks.
Before we leave, first I want to ask you